I was browsing through the aisles of a department store, hoping to find a good deal on a new pair of shoes. As I was searching, I noticed a woman eyeing a pair of shoes that were on sale. She seemed to be around my age, with blonde hair pulled back into a tight ponytail and had a face that looked like it had seen too much sun. Her eyes, however, were what caught my attention. They were dark and had an intense glare that made me feel uneasy. I picked up the shoes and asked a salesperson if they had any other sizes, but she said, "I'm sorry, this is the last pair we have, and it didn't fit the lady over there." The woman I saw earlier looked at me, and we exchanged awkward smiles. I decided to try them on, and they fit perfectly. Just as I was about to walk away, the woman stepped in front of me and said, "Excuse me, miss, but I was here first, and I'd like to take a look at those shoes." "Sure, go ahead," I replied, holding out the shoes for her to inspect. She took the shoes from my hand and examined them closely. After a few moments, she looked up at me with a sour expression. "I don't think these will fit you," she said with a hint of arrogance. "Well, they fit me just fine," I responded. She frowned and retorted, "But I really need them, and you're not even wearing them. Can't you see that they're not your style?" "I don't see why you can't just give them to me. It's not like you need them or anything," she said, her voice growing louder. I rolled my eyes and responded, "Well, I'm planning on wearing them to an event tomorrow, and I've been searching for this style for weeks." At this point, I realized that I was dealing with an entitled Karen. I tried to walk away, but she grabbed onto my arm. "You're lying! Those are my shoes, and you're trying to steal them from me!" "You're not going anywhere until you give me those shoes," she yelled, her grip tightening. I was taken aback by her sudden outburst, but before I could say anything, she grabbed the shoes from my hands and tried to pull them away. We began to struggle, and I could feel her nails digging into my skin. That's when she called out, "Security! This girl is trying to steal my shoes." I was bewildered by her audacity to lie about the situation, but I knew that I had to remain calm. 2 security guards arrived at the scene, and the woman quickly claimed that I had tried to steal the shoes from her. "This woman is trying to steal my shoes." "I'm sorry, but that's not true," I said, hoping that the guards would believe me. The salesperson came over and confirmed that I was the one who picked up the shoes first and that they didn't fit the woman anyway. The guards asked for our IDs, and after taking our statements, they determined that the woman was lying. They escorted her out of the store, but not before she yelled profanities and insults at me. As she was being dragged away, I couldn't help but smirk and think, "Looks like the Karen didn't get her way this time." I bought the shoes and wore them to the event the next day with confidence, knowing that I had won a battle against an entitled Karen. When I was in high school back in the late 90s, one of my teachers shared a story with the class in order to explain why we would have a substitute teacher next week. My teacher was in his late 30s, married for only a couple of years, and over the summer he and his wife bought their first house together. As is typical, the house was in a development that had an HOA. While he wasn't thrilled at the idea of a meddling HOA, it is a necessary and unavoidable evil. He went through their CCRs with a fine-tooth comb and decided that while there was some stuff he wasn't a fan of, overall he could live with it. So they signed the papers and bought the house. About a week after they move in, they get a non-compliance letter stating that the tree in their front yard was not an approved species and must be removed. Problem is the tree was native to that spot, was estimated at 80 to 100 years old, and was a pecan. I mentioned the type for 2 reasons. First, a pecan produces nuts, obviously, and that is why the HOA said it can't be in the front yard. After all, a lawnmower flings a rogue pecan through a neighbor's window, and there will be an issue. The second issue is that this was in the Dallas, Texas area. The pecan is the state tree of Texas and as such gets a little legal protection. Basically, to cut one down, you need to have a permit. To get that permit, you have to show the tree is diseased or a hazard. Just being in the way is not sufficient. My teacher is upset as the tree is large, provides lots of shade, and he likes eating pecans. He writes back to the HOA, who turn a deaf ear and point to the CCR and refer him to their legal team for any further questions. He then contacts the county and state, who both come back with they can't remove the tree without a permit or he will face a large fine and/or jail. He copies that letter and sends it along with his own letter in a certified envelope to the HOA lawyers. The lawyers come back that the CCR is binding. He is not allowed to have fruit or nut-producing trees in his front yard, but ornamental trees of flowers and flower pots are okay. This part is important. If it isn't removed in 30 days, they will begin fining him. At this point, he gets his own lawyer and turns it over to him. A couple of months go by, and we are to the part of this story where he is explaining why there will be a substitute. He will be going to court to have a judge weigh in on the matter. The next week comes, and after the court hearing, he comes in and says that basically he lost as the judge ruled the CCR did apply and the tree had to go, however, since it was a native tree at the time of development. The HOA would be responsible for all expenses of removal, not him as the homeowner. Now, most people probably would have let it go at this point. Sure, you lost the tree, but it isn't costing you anything. Not my teacher. The man decided it was time to protest the overreaching HOA and their absurdity, so he got to reading. After going through the CCRs thoroughly, he took a trip to Home Depot and bought some hose, fittings, and a nicer Kohler toilet. He set the toilet up in the middle of the yard right where the tree had been and ran the hose and fittings to his outside faucet, so that it was hooked up for water in, not hooked to a sewer. This is the front yard after all. He then dumped some potting soil in the bowl and planted some decorative flowers. It took a few weeks, but the non-compliance letter came in stating he had house waste in the front yard and it must be removed within 72 hours or he would be fined. He wrote back there was no house waste. They responded again, and he stated they needed to come show him where this supposed waste was. The next day, an HOA guy comes out and points right at the toilet and says, "It cannot be there. It is an eyesore." My teacher responded, "Sorry you feel that way about my self-watering flower pot, but I see nowhere in the CCRs that state what style of flower pot is or is not allowed." HOA gets verbally heated and threatens to call the cops, to which my teacher agrees. Having his bluff called, the HOA guy leaves. A week or so goes by and the class I am in is pestering our teacher every day for news stories on this. He said he got a letter from their lawyers, which he sent straight to his lawyer. His lawyer agreed with him that the CCR in no way, shape, or form puts any qualifiers or limitations on flower pots, and as the flowers are clearly visible, it doesn't constitute debris or trash in the yard. A few back-and-forth things happen between the lawyers, and then the HOA moves for a trial, which gets the same judge as before. The judge reviewed the case and dismissed it as frivolous. He did put in his remarks or decision something along the lines of, while the defendant's choice of a flower pot is eye-raising and isn't traditional, there is nothing illegal about his use of a commode as art in his yard. The plaintiff has failed to demonstrate any sound reason this would violate existing rules and bylaws of their association. I work in a special education room as a teacher's aide. It has been wonderful and the joy of my life for 5 years. However, last year I lost my whole team. They moved on to other careers and cities. My new team this year are absolute unprofessional amateurs. There are 2 teachers that I work with, and they are lazy, rude, horribly inexperienced, and bullies. They tell one of our special needs kids to go around pushing other kids, and the day before we left for the weekend of Halloween, they encouraged all of the kids to bully another aide I work with. This aide in particular was a special needs student himself. He is a really high-functioning autistic adult, my friend and roommate. I am mentoring him inside and outside of the classroom, and he has tried really hard and is succeeding. But these new teachers take advantage of his meek personality and have the kids bully him. They tell the kids to take his phone, keys, and wallet right out of his pocket. They allowed the kids to hold his limbs down and pin him to a table. They did nothing to stop it, only encouraged it and laughed. These teachers are also trying their best to make my life miserable. I think it's because I'm really good at what I do, and they are threatened by it. One of the things they did was try to pin negligence on me. I was walking all of our kids up from the gym by myself, and one of our kids shut down and did not come with us. I did not notice because we were short-staffed and I had a huge group all by myself. However, this kid was not left by herself. There was a coach, a teacher, and 2 aides still in the gym with her, and they brought her up. Just an honest mistake. My old team never would have thrown someone under the bus like that. I went to an assistant principal and told him everything that these teachers are doing to these kids. The situation is being handled, and it has been super awkward ever since. However, revenge is in my heart. I watched my classroom, the love of my sad life, the thing that encouraged me to get back into school and go for a degree, almost have it, devolve into chaos. I watched my friend, the only person in the world who looks up to me, besides my students, get embarrassed. I want them to pay. I'm going to secretly message the parents and tell them what happened. I just have to do it in a way that keeps me safe. This happened a while back. I was 14, but 5'11", 6 foot while wearing shoes. I went to a local grocery store with my parents. It's a huge store, almost like a Walmart, and the employees wear black polo tees which say, "How can I help you?" As usual, my parents and I entered the store and split up to get our separate groceries. I was picking up some miscellaneous food items like chips, pasta sauce, sausages, etc. I'd found some chips in a flavor that I like, but not the brand that I wanted. The current brand's chips would have a weird aftertaste. And so I put the chips back on the shelf. Here comes a woman in maybe her late 40s or 50s, asking me why the ready-made pizza rolls were so expensive. I told her I didn't know and that I didn't work here. I can kind of see why she thought I was an employee. I was wearing a Black Panther shirt, which was mainly black. As soon as I said I didn't work here, she screamed, "Don't try to fool me! I know you work here!" I was shocked. I don't work here. I'm just a 14-year-old getting groceries. A cashier from the front came and asked us what was wrong. Let's refer to the lady as Karen from now on. Karen said, "This employee assaulted me and refuses to help me." The dumbfounded employee says, "He doesn't work here." He then turned to me and asked if I assaulted her. I explained the situation to him and he had a look on his face, something like, "I don't want to deal with this nonsense right now." He just tells the lady to calm down, then goes back to the registers. The lady then throws a tantrum and runs her hand through the shelves, putting a bunch of food boxes on the ground and breaking several bottles. The cashier called the cops like any sane person would. I just stood there in awe. The cops arrived while she was screaming at me. I don't even remember what she said. We both were made to sit down while they looked through the security footage. Turns out Karen had been shoplifting and was caught putting several items in her handbag. When the cops tried to cuff her, she socked on straight to the face and her nose started bleeding. I don't know what happened next because I had gone back to shopping. Cashier told me that she was charged with assault, larceny, I think that's what it's called, and vandalism.